Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. Getting back to our normal schedule now until I guess Tisha B'Av. So we left off. We got to the top of today's daf. Today's daf is daf Tzadi Beis. So we said Nisei Sapi Bezdin. The two dots, right? So we're continuing learning from our Mishnah. So we're getting to the bottom of the big Mishnah from Pei Zayin at Beis. So just to go back, so the Mishnah over there says, Nisei Sapi Bezdin, if she got remarried upon using Bezdin, in other words, basically using the testimony of a single individual, and she used that to go ahead and get married, the guy returns. So Tate say, so she should leave him, but she's put from the korban for bringing any sort of chatas.
They say she.
Zak the Gemara.
Where's it again?
Tzadi Beis Amar Aleph on top. He says so Amar Zeiri, and away we go. Amar Zeiri less lamasisim midetani bei midrash. Right. So our Mishnah does not seem to hold like that which is taught in the Bei Midrasha, the Beis Medrash, the tiny Bei Midrasha was taught over there in the Beis Medrash. It says Haru Beis Shagachama. So if Beis didn't made a ruling, let's say it was towards the end of Shabbos and it got dark. Okay, it's dark. Shabbos over. The sun came back out. Ein Zahara Elotos. That's not considered a hara, a psak, a ruling of the Beis Din. Rather, it was a mistake. And therefore, those people who went ahead and did some sort of malacha would be obligated to chatas. So our Mishnah, right, basically says that the woman has to, she is, right, the archai chatas, and this one seems, right, so this one says, ptura mina karban, right, and this one seems to say that they're b'chai. Rav Nachman Amar hara, and Rav Nachman says, no, our case is considered to be a hora, is considered to be a ruling, right? And therefore it's a ruling. One can rely on it. So now Rav Nachman Teda, you should know. So the entire, throughout the Torah, one witness does not believe. And over here, they use the testimony of one individual to go ahead and make up psak. So it's not just a case of, right, the mistaken facts, right? There's a psak that's given by the Beis Din. So my time, right? It is not because it's a hora, it's an actual ruling. In other words, Beis Din has to take the testimony of one person and make it into a ruling. And Amar Rava Teda the Tosu. No, it says no, it's a Tosu. It's not considered right to be hora, it's a mistake. Dilu hora Beis Din b'chelev v'dam hatera. Let's say Beis Din had a ruling that fats or blood hatera, it was mutter. The hadar chazu tamli surah, and then they saw a reason to go back and to aser it. If there would be another reason to go back, that which they permitted before, so that we would have listened to that. In other words, we have the original psak that was aser. We can't go back to the original psak. But over here, if you have one witness comes and sharina, and then one witness comes says the guy died, and then aser trade, and two people says what are you talking about? He's alive. So asarna. So it says asar ki hadar asa aid achrin. If another one has come, sharina lay, then we would say it's mutter. My time alam mishun de tosu. Is it not because, right, that which originally was stated was a tos, was a mistake, and therefore, so you see over here that it's considered to be a mistake, not a hora. The Af Rebbe Eliezer suffered the tosu, and even Rebbe Eliezer says that this is a mistake. It's not considered a psak. The Tanya Rebbe Eliezer Aimer. Yikuv hadin is hahar. Right, you should go ahead and investigate the matter, rather making a hole in the mountain. The tavi chatas. Right, and she has to go ahead and bring a chatas shmeina, right? Big fat chatas. So why? If you say that it was a mistake, because then if she's not relying on the Beis Din, if she relies on Beis Din, then it's Beis Din's avera. But if it's not Beis Din's psak, Beis Din just made, took mistaken facts, so therefore it's a tosu, because that's the reason. That's why she would have to bring a korban. Ella, but if you say it's a psak, amai masi korban. Why would she have to bring a korban? Right? She's depending on their psak. So maybe Rabbi Eliezer holds that normally we have a case of by Horios, right? When you bring a parlam davar, right? When most of Bnei Yisrael is relying upon the psak of Beis Din. So Beis Din brings a chatas there, but maybe in a case of when an individual that does Haras Beis Din Chayiv brings one, in Cain, if that's the case, Ma'ikuv Din is a har. Right? What is the lashon over here means? Let us, make a hole through the mountain, right? In order that she brings a chatas. In other words, why investigate the matter, right? In other words, she would just go ahead and bring it regularly, but it's not. But the fact is that investigate the matter means it was a toast, and since it was a mistake, therefore it was not considered a psak of the basin, rather it was a mistake, and that's the reason why she would have to go ahead and bring a chatas in such a case. And then finally, the Mishnah says, you have to find somebody. So it says, Hora basically not say. The basin says she can go ahead and marry the hocha, and then she went the kilkula, and then she the kilkula, right? She did something bad. Chayeves bekorban. The Mishnah says she's chayev bekorban. Shelo yitira eli nase, because they only permitted her to go ahead and marry. So what's the case over there? So my kilkula, what does it mean when the Mishnah says kilkula? So Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, zinsa. It means basically she was told that he was dead, and she went ahead and when she was mizana, right? She had relations with somebody shalom b'toras kedushin. And Rabbi Yechanan Amar Alman of the Kohen Gadol means that she was told the guy her husband died, and she was an Alman and she married a Kohen Gadol or a grusha chulutza of the Kohen Hedyot, or she was a grusha from before or chulutza and she went to go ahead and marry a regular Kohen. So Mandi Omer Zinsa, and in such a case, she has to go ahead and bring a korban. So Mandi Omer Zinsa, if you said she has to bring a korban, even if she was just mizana with somebody, Kol Shekain, certainly if she also went ahead and she was Almana married a Kohen Gadol. And Mandi Omer Almana the Kohen Gadol, but the one who says that she only brings a korban, she's Almana the Kohen Gadol, Aval Zinsa lo, because that's an Isser. But Zinsa, which is not necessarily a lav, then she would not have to bring one. My timer, because she would say that you guys made me a pnuya, and Lamaisa, according to the letter of the law of Torah, right? She did not do any isurim, so therefore she should not go ahead and be obligated to bring a chatas. And Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Yechanan, we have a price in support of Rabbi Yechanan, who says that when kilkula means
if her husband's not a Kohen, she could go back to her husband.
But we're not talking about going back to the husband now. We're talking about whether she has to bring a korban. When they said he died, and then she went ahead and acted inappropriately, either by having relations with another man, or let's say she was an almana, and even for almana before, and she went ahead and married a Kohen Gadol. So that's the case. We said she has to bring a korban. So the machlokas as to what does kilkula mean. So over here, one says Shivadai did a lav, such as marry a Kohen Gadol, and the other one says she was just mizana, and even for that she has to bring a korban. So we have a Bryce Tani Klasid Rabbi Yechanan. So Bryce's word Rabbi Yechanan says Hara basically say, right? If Basin goes ahead and permits her to go ahead and marry based on testimony of one witness, and she went ahead and was kilkula. Kigon, it says here beferish. Almana the Kohen Gadol or Grusha Chutz the Kohen Hedyot. If she was an Almana, then she went ahead and married a Kohen Gadol, or Grusha, she was a divorcee, or she had Chalitza done to her before to a Kohen Hedyot. Chayavis the Korban. She's Chayav Korban. And I'll call Bia each and every time she had Bia Divi Rabbi Elazar, that's been Rabbi Elazar, and Korban Echad al Kos. It says now if she married, let's say, one Kohen, even though she lived with them for many years, nevertheless she only brings one Korban. The Chachamim agreed to Rabbi Elazar. She nises lechamisha b'nei adam. Right? She married, let's say 5 different Kohanim. She got married, got divorced, married another one, got divorced, married another one, got divorced, and all of a sudden the original husband comes back. Then she would have to bring definitely an each and every korban act, which for each and every husband, because they are different people. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Naya Mishnah. Ha'isha shahalach. Speaking of which, Miralus is sitting shiva at
8 o'clock.
Where? At Ari's house?
It might be questionable.
Okay, fine. You let us know.
What was that guy?
Yeah, his sister was Nefteris.
Oh, his sister?
She was sick for many years.
Oh,
It might be
yeah.
more doctors at Park Plaza, and that's it.
Okay. Yeah. So someone just put on the chat, please. Thank you. Okay. All right. Ha'isha shahalach. Ha'isha shahalach. Baila. Yeah. So a woman, so her husband went to, and her husband and son went off to Medina Siyam for many years. Didn't see him for a while. But Bob Ramallah, Meiz Baalech died. And the time your husband died, you still had a son. Then afterwards, the son died. So there, in other words, when the husband died, there's already no yibum or chalitza because she has a child, and even if he dies afterwards, it doesn't make the chiyuv, come back. Then he says, so based upon that, she went ahead and got married. And afterwards, they said, no. It was the opposite. In other words, the son died first, and therefore, basically, you were childless, and then the husband died, so you're chayiv yibum or chalitza, right?
I thought we said that if she had had a child.
If she had a child and he died before
the husband,
then yibum chalitza. So it's such a case, and then she went and married somebody else. Teitze v'havlad rishon v'acharon mamzer. She would have to go ahead and leave because the rishon and acharon is a mamzer. We'll soon see this goes according to Rabbi Kiva, because remember, she went ahead and married somebody else. In other words, even though there was an obligation of yibum chalitza, she went ahead to the shuk and married a random person, and therefore that would make the child, because that's a lav, right? You have to do yibum chalitza, which would create a lav to go ahead and marry somebody else. So therefore, the child is a mamzer. We'll soon see what the lashon of rishon and acharon is.
Amru would only be according to Rabbi Akiva.
Oh, according to Rabbi Akiva, right. It's point down in the Gemara, and Rashi points out also over here in the Mishnah. So Amru Allah, they told her, Meiz bincha, let's say the opposite case. They told her, your son died, you have no children, and then your husband died, she says, okay, I'm chayv yibum, she does yibum with the brother. Amru Allah, afterwards they say, no. Chiluf hayad dvarim was the opposite, right? The husband died first, and therefore your child was alive. There was no obligation yibum chalitza, and she ended up marrying her brother-in-law. Teitze v'avlad rishon v'achron mamzer. So she has to divorce him because then the Vlad, Rishon, and Achron is mamzer, meaning that before she heard or even after she heard, since it's Eishes Achiv, right. So, since it was, right, it was her brother's, right. So therefore, child's mamzer. Now, new case. Amrullah Meiz Baalech. They told her, your husband died, let's say, no kids. The Nises, she got married, right, because he died. V'acharkach amrullah kaya, right? They said afterwards they told her kayim haya, right? Really, he was alive when you got married, umeis, and then he died. In other words, now you are single. But lamais, the time when you got married, right? That was bad, right? That was you shouldn't have been married then, umeis. Teitze v'havlad rishon mamzer. That if it was from before that he actually died, right? Then the Vlad's a mamzer. But if the child was after, V'achron ain't a mamzer, would not be a mamzer, because then she was really, she was supposed to go ahead and remarry. And Amrullah, Meiz Balecha, if they told her your husband died, then she went there and had Kedushin, then also he comes back and she just was Mekadesh to somebody else. Muteras lachzarlo. She can go back and return to him. And Avapisha Nasan la'achron get. And even though the second one that she was just Mekadesh to, so remember, she's supposed to be Yibum Chalitza. Then she heard the guy died, or she wasn't supposed to be Yibum Chalitza, excuse me, right? She heard her husband died. She goes, okay, there's no brothers. I'm going to go ahead and marry. And then she got Kedushin, and all of a sudden the husband comes back, right? And even if he goes ahead and gives her a get, the second guy, Lo pasla meaning doesn't pass her because it's not a real get. Because really, we'll soon see. Maker Adin, he didn't have to go ahead and give her a get because it was only kedushin. And at Zudar Rabbi Elazar ben Masya, and in this Rabbi Elazar ben Masya darshan, that she's not even supposed to make a kahuna. She's not considered to be a grusha. Why? The isha grusha meisha says a woman who is divorced from her husband. V'lo meish she'ena isha, and she's divorced from a man who is not her husband, and therefore, since she was makabel kedushin from someone who is technically not her husband, right? Because she was already married to the first guy because he wasn't dead. Therefore, this get that she gets from the second guy that she was mekadeshes to would not pass her mina kahuna. Fine, that was the Mishnah. So Zok the Gemara, my Rishon and my Achron. What does it mean? When we say in the first cases over there, Rishon Achron from the first or second one, that was the case of when the father and son went off to Medina Siyam, and there was a question of the order. So Ilema Rishon Lifnei Shemua v'Achron Achar Shemua. if it was, in other words, we're saying that it was before she heard the proper order and afterwards. So at least they have Vlad Mamzer, just say the Vlad's Mamzer, it's from the same person. So our answer is no, Mishum de Kavoy the Misne Seifa. Because the Seifa, there was actually a different halacha when it comes to the Rishon Achra, right? In the case of Amrullah Meis Balech, the Nises, when they told her your husband died and then she went ahead and married somebody else, and afterwards, Amrullah Kayim, Haya Umeis. And then they told her, no, he really is alive, but he died, but you got married, let's say a year too early, and he died, a year later. Umeis Harishon, and then Umeis, therefore he died. Harishon Mamzer, then in that case, if it was before he actually died, then the Vlad's a Mamzer, because she was a married woman. Biachron, but it was after the Shmua, that is not a Mamzer. So since the Reisha uses, the Seifa used the Lashon of Rishon and Achron, so too, Taninami Reisha, Rishon, Biachron, Mamzer. So too, the Seifa writes Rishon, Achron, Mamzer, even though it's really all from the same person. Fine. 4 lines from the bottom. Tanar Rabbanan. And by the way, as we pointed out, Zo Divrei Rabbi Kiva, this is the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, when she goes off and marries somebody, the shuk, right? And that the child will be a mamzer, and kedushin types that the kedushin is not types of and therefore the v'lav will be a mamzer, v'chamim b'imrim, ein mamzer, miyavama, the yimima. So, however, the Chachamim say, no, there is no mamzer from this case of when from the Yavama marrying somebody else. Why didn't you just say beferish? There's no mamzer from Chavi Lavin. Why did you specifically say this case? There is no mamzer according to Rabbi Kiva that the child is a mamzer from the Yavama, and the Chachamim say no, there is no. There is no mamzer from the Yavama. Why they say that? Why don't you say a mamzer mechavi lavin? So Tana the Rabbi Kiva. So this was because there's a machlokes in. This is the opinion of those who argue Rabbi Kiva. The Amar mechavi lavin the share havi mamzer mechavi lavin great deloy havi mamzer, because we want to point out the shita of the Rabbanan. Now the Rabbanan argue over there. There's a machlokes in Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says that in certain cases, if it's a lav, the child is a mamzer, but it's only in a case of where the prohibition is, let's say, from a relative or from a relation, such as this case. In other words, she was zakuk liyibum, and she had a child with somebody else. So since that has to do with a relationship, therefore that's a lav. But let's say it was just a regular lav. Let's say she went ahead and married an Asin or somebody that she wasn't allowed to marry, or mitzvah, or not mitzvah because it's a chaviyase, right? But anyways, someone who she wasn't supposed to, right? One of the Kohen Gadol, that case wouldn't be a lav, because that's not a lav of she'er. It's only a lav that has to do with being related that would create a mamzer, but not any lav. And therefore, that's the reason why their lashon over here, when they argued with Rabbi Kiva, was there is no. They argue and says no, he's not a mamzer from the Yavam. And Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Minayin shein kedushin taifsin b'Yavama. Where do we know that kedusha is not taifes with the Yavama? If a woman is supposed to do yibum and she goes ahead and she tries to do kedushin with somebody else, there is no kedushin there. It doesn't work. Shinamar the pasuk says, "Lo yizeh leish eishes hameis hachutza leish zar." Right? That this woman should not go ahead and she should not go outside and be lo siyeh. The lashon havya, right, or haya refers to kedushin, and therefore she should not be with another man, meaning there is no kedushin there. There should not be any kedushin. In other words, kedushin is not chal if she goes ahead and she's waiting to do yibum or chalitza, and somebody else from the shuk, non-related, comes and gives her kesef kedushin. That doesn't work. So that's what Rav said. Ushmol Amar, when it was Seinu, he says no, because from our sins, from our poverty, that we don't really know how to darsham psukim. Tzricha get. She needs a get misafik. She receives kedushin from someone else. We're not sure if that's the pshat of the pasuk, and therefore maybe the kedushin does work, and therefore she needs a get from him misfakely lishmo, because shmo is a suffix. Hi, let's see eishes hameis, right? That the pasuk of that the wife of the dead brother, right? That pasuk doesn't mean ilalav hudasa is it coming to teach us that there's a separate lav, or if it's teaching us that the kedushin doesn't work. So therefore, Shmuel says, because of Safek, we're going to say if you receive kedushin from somebody else, you need a get. And according to Rav, it doesn't work at all. There is no Safek there. So Amar Le Rav Mari Bar Rachel Rav Ashi Hachi Amar Meimar Halacha Kivasi the Shmuel. The halacha is like Shmuel that you do need to go ahead and get receive a get me suffix from the outside person. And Amar Rav Ashi says Rav Ashi Hashda Amar Meimar Halacha Kivasi the Shmuel. Now that a Meimar says the halacha is like Shmuel. Im Haya Yavama Kohen. If the Yavama or the Yavam was a Kohen, so the brother died. He's also a Kohen because the brother's a Kohen, right? So the guy dies, and there's a Kohen going to do Yibum Chalitza, and she's Mekah, and then she goes ahead and receives Kesef, whatever Kedusha from somebody else. So Choletz La, right? So the Shayale, right? And then, so therefore, since in this case it was really nothing, so therefore he does. If the he was so the Kohen goes ahead and does Chalitza to her, and therefore she's mutter to the other person. Right, so because the Kohen, he can't go ahead and do Yibum with her anymore, right? Because it's a suffix. Maybe she didn't. Therefore, it might be a Chalutza or a Gerusha. They were assertive, and therefore, so he has to go ahead and do Chalitza, and therefore she be mutter to man number two. So when I ask, so he's gar, right? Well, now this person is being rewarded. We see that the sinner is being rewarded, and still now she was basically bound to the brother who was a Kohen. And now you're saying, well, since the Kohen can't take her back because she's going to be a grusha, he has to give her chalitza, and now she can go ahead and live with a sinner who wasn't supposed to try and be mekadesh her before she did even her chalitza. So rather, what is it meant to say? Elohim haya yavam Yisrael. If the yavam was Yisrael, then Naisin Lasheni get, then the other person gets her get, and therefore she's able to go ahead and marry the yavam. And Amar Rav Gidal, Rav Chia Bar Yosef, Amar Rav Yavama Kedushin Einba, Nesuin Yeshba. If she goes off to the shuk and she gets Kedushin, that doesn't work. But if she goes off and gets married to somebody else and not the Yavam, right? She's a Shomeres Yavam, she gets Nesuin, that works. So Gemara says, what are you talking about? Kedushin Einba, Nesuin Einba, right? Well, if the Kedushin doesn't work, then the Nesuin can't work. So how can you differentiate? So Einba, Kedusha, and Nesuin Einba. So there's three ways of answering. First way is no. What I meant to say was they're all together. In other words, the Kedushin and the Nesuin don't work. Or you can say, my Nesuin Yeshba. What does it mean that there is Nesuin? Biznus. It means it's referring to that there's Nus. And Rav Hamnuna, Dama Rav Hamnuna, Shomeres Yavam Shazinsa, Asura Liyavama. That if she goes ahead and does Nesuin, it's not really Nesuin, she's just Mizana, then she becomes Asur to the Yavam and therefore has to go ahead and do Chalitza. She can no longer do Yibum. So therefore, if she just did Kedushin, we'll say, okay, no harm, no foul. But she was Mizana, then she's Asur to the Yavam. Or Vibai. Same Eliyalim, Amran, Meikar, really, like we said originally, that the Kedushin there is no, but the Nesuin there isn't. Kedushin ain't ba, Nesuin yesh ba. We'll say like this. In the case we had, we'll say that if she doesn't sue with the second person, then that is affected to the point that you have to divorce her. No different than the case of a woman who they testified that your husband died and she went ahead and married somebody else and he returns. Then in that case, we make her divorce the second person. So to over here, we make her divorce based upon the Nesuin because of that case of Isha Shalach Ba'alam and the Asiyah. And Amar Rabbi Yanai, the Chabura, Nimnu, V'gamru, he says amongst the Chabura, so they passed and they decided, Ein Kedushin Taifsin B'Yavam. There is no Kedushin that is Taifes with the Yavam. With, in other words, with if she goes ahead and receives Kedushin from somebody else, someone from the Shuk, that does not work. So Amalei Rabbi Yechanan says Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Lo Mishnah. Is this not a Mishnah? Right? Look at this Mishnah. The Tanah we learned in the Mishnah. Ha'omer leisha hareya mikudeshes li la'achash is gaya. A guy, he's a guy. He says, "I'm about to convert. Accept this kedusha now. That when I convert, you'll be my wife. You'll be already." No, he's giving her now. Basically, it should act now. Now, remember, can't be mekadesh right now. So he's basically doing something which doesn't exist. Or she's converting. He says, okay, when you accept this now, because after you convert, then you'll be my wife. or he says after I get freed as a slave, or or after you're freed as a slave, or she's married to a guy, he says, hey, here's your kesef kedushin, when your husband dies, or let's say he's married to her sister, and he says, take this kedusha now, she's dying, once she dies, will be mukadeshes to me.
Why is this different than any other nether that someone says that if this were to happen, then D will have, meaning.
So let's see,
any
so let's
nether
see,
in the world,
so all these guys,
that's what it is.
so let's see the psak over here. Oh, or he says, hey, and this is going to be our proof. Or he says a woman falls to Yibum, to her brother-in-law, and so somebody else she's in love with, right? So he says to her, hey, take this kesef kedushin. Once the brother does chalitza to you, you'll be married to me, or you'll be mikudeshes to me. Eina mikudeshes. None of this works. So what do you see over here? That the kedushin, right? That by the fact that she, in other words, if kedushin works with a woman who's waiting for yibum or chalitza, then it would be mikudeshes. But it says over there, ain't a mikudeshes. It doesn't work. Why? Because it's not possible now. So you see over here that kedushin does not work with someone l'shuk if she's waiting for yibum or chalitza. Amarle. So he says, oh, why do you got to teach that halacha? Oh, it's a fair Mishnah. So he says, no, Amarle, ilav chaspa. Right? If I didn't basically remove the shard for you, would you have found the pro underneath it? In other words, only because I told you this halacha were you able to understand this Mishnah and see pshat in it. And the reason over there is because a woman cannot receive kedushin if she's waiting for yibum or chalitza from the brother. So Amar le Reish Lakish ilav the classical gavarabba. If it wasn't for the fact that basically you were taught this from a great man, right? Havamina ana masnisin. I could explain this shot in this Mishnah a different way, right? What was the case? Masnisa, I could have said it was Rabbi Kiva. It was the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. The Amar ain't kedushin types in b'chavi lav. Because you can just say, well, it's allowed for her to go ahead and marry somebody else, marry someone l'shuk, and that's the reason why it doesn't work. Not because the Rabbanan would agree. The Rabbanan would say, okay, it's only allowed, the kedushin should work. Rather, maybe I would have said it's only Rabbi Kiva here, right? That's the reason why the kedushin over there is not effective. So the Rabbi Kiva, ki amar lo la'achashich kedushin, right? So if it was Rabbi Kiva, right? Even if you want to say it's Rabbi Kiva, so if he says, hey, will you receive this after you get chalitza, would this work? Right? Right? Because according to Rabbi Kiva, a person could be makne davar shelo be'olam. In other words, that we see according to Rabbi Kiva, that it would work. In other words, according to Rabbi Kiva, why? Because someone can do something, make a condition now, even though it doesn't exist. In other words, even though it's prohibited according to Rabbi Kiva, or especially according to Rabbi Kiva, that kedushin wouldn't work. But according to Rabbi Kiva, you're allowed to give over something or acquire something that doesn't exist yet. And what doesn't exist yet? Her being able, right? Her permission to go ahead and be mikudeshes to somebody else. So even though it doesn't exist now, it would exist once she gets chalitza. According to Rabbi Kiva, right? So he holds adam makne davar shelo be'olam. And where do we see that? We learn in the Mishnah. Kainem she'eni oiseh leficha. So she says to him, I'm making a nether, right? That my work, right, will not go to you, right? So I'm making an usher. Ein tzarich lav, right? He doesn't have to go ahead and be mefer, right? Because over here, right, her ma'aseh that which she does is not in existence. And Rabbi Kiva says, Yefer, you do have to go ahead and nullify that vow. Why? Because perhaps even though her ma'aseh go to him, but if there's extra work, then that wouldn't go to him, and therefore she's answering that. So what do you see over here? that she is able to answer something that's a davar shelo ba'olam, something that's not in existence yet, right? Her overtime, she didn't work her next 2 weeks. She didn't earn the paycheck yet, but she's saying, I'm going to answer that. So if there was overtime or extra amount of money, she's answering that. So we see, according to Rabbi Kiva, you can answer something shelo ba'olam. So my answer is no. That is considered to be something davar ba'olam. Why? Because that case of this, Amar Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yeshua v'yomeres is kadshu yadai lo yisayim. The dime is going to be almost. She's not saying my future wages. She's saying anything which my hands produce. Since her hands are in existence, so therefore that's considered to be like she's answering something that does exist, and therefore answering something that does exist is forbidden. But maybe, right? So over there, maybe that's considered to be something that does exist. That's why he does it. But maybe according to Rabbi Kiva, right? So then you can answer in this case that maybe Rabbi Kiva doesn't hold that something shelo ba'olam can't be acquired, and therefore you have no proof in this case that if it was Rabbi Kiva, what he would say in this situation, because in this case, can she go ahead and acquire her kedushin if she didn't get her chalitza yet? And this conversation continues tomorrow regarding davar being makdim davar shelo ba'olam. All right, we'll stop here. Shkaya.